Okay, quiz time. What does Scooby Doo and the Blair Witch Project have in common?
I don't know.
And you might be thinking, well, one's about a cartoon talking dog, and the other one's the most influential horror movie ever made. But if you think again, they are both technically horror franchises. And so what we're talking about today is when Cartoon Network actually combined the two, and it's called the Scooby Doo Project. So the Blair Witch Project released before modern internet, like the internet was just in its infancy, and so it became a massive horror phenomenon because of its marketing, not necessarily because of the movie itself. It did pioneer found footage type movies, but there were found footage movies before then that were also massive hits. But the reason why this is brought up in conversation is because the marketing campaign tied to this movie was insane. So the marketing basically tried to convince people that this movie was real, that the footage really happened in real life. But before I get way into it, the premise of the movie is that these three people are doing this documentary about a witch in the forest, and they interview locals, and they decide to camp for the night in said forest, and they get lost, and a lot of weird stuff happens, and all it culminates with them going to a house and then them basically disappearing. So one of the tactics that they went for in marketing to make this movie feel real is that they created a website claiming that the three main characters were actually missing. There was a whole website with all the information about them, their last whereabouts, what they were doing, all of that. Also, they put missing posters around the cities where the movie was gonna be shown. Another thing that made the movie feel even more real is that the actors used their real names in the movie. And this campaign was so convincing that the actors' families actually received condolence calls from people they knew who actually believed that their kids went missing and or have died. The movie, in my opinion, works because of the mystery and build-up before the audience actually saw it. I feel like the movie doesn't really have staying power. If you were around back then, I feel like you would see all this stuff happening and talk about to your friends, did you hear about this happening? And they're gonna show the footage in movies. But once you know it's fictional, I think the movie loses a lot of its impact. If we just look at the movie itself, I don't think it's a great movie. I know, maybe a crazy opinion, but I actually do not like the Blair Witch Project. To me, it's mostly people arguing and walking through the woods with occasional strange events ooh, someone put sticks in our tent, and the rest of the time it's just them being lost. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen a movie that's a decade old or whatever, it builds up to the end of the movie where they find a witch's house, and one of the characters named Mike stands in a corner, and then Heather gets attacked by something. Without the "this is real" marketing, I think the ending feels pretty underwhelming, and I feel like the movie itself is just a underwhelming story. Don't get me wrong, the way that they filmed this movie and didn't have a script, they just told the characters that you have to be at this point and be here at this certain time, and they gave them notes to say this is what your character is acting in this moment, and they didn't really know each other's lines or their little papers. I think it's pretty cool, but the movie just is kind of lackluster, and that really shows with how they try to make sequels, and they all flopped, and then they even came out with a video game, and the video game didn't do well either, and so the whole franchise has just basically been dead in the water for a while. Only 4 months after the Blair Witch Project, Cartoon Network parodied.
Cam going to street, bro. Dang.
The Blair Witch Project. They parodied it. It was created to promote a Scooby Doo Where Are You Halloween marathon on October 31st, 1999, with short segments airing in between commercial breaks. At the end of the marathon, Cartoon Network eventually did air the complete special with an extended ending, and the special eventually even won an Annie Award. So a little bit of the behind the scenes with this special before we talk about it is the Blair Witch, after the Blair Witch Project exploded in popularity, 3 Cartoon Network animators pitched the idea to Cartoon Network, and they swiftly created a short proof of concept animation that convinced the network to greenlight the project. The project had a very small budget, and they reused a lot of animation whenever possible. The live action scenes were filmed at one of the producer's parents' house using a mini DV camera, and the Mystery Machine footage was filmed in Canada because the real van was on tour. The voice actors recorded many of their lines over the phone while they were also working on Scooby Doo on Zombie Island, which is one of the best Scooby Doo movies, by the way, and I'm gonna definitely have to make a video on that. Although a lot of the TV shows made Blair Witch parodies in 1999, the Scooby Doo project became one of the most memorable and well regarded. A quick little story about me is that I remember seeing the Scooby Doo project listed alongside like other Scooby Doo movies when I was younger, and I honestly thought it was a fake or like some sort of fan made project, you know? Like when you look up online like all the Scooby Doo movies or Scooby Doo movies and like there's some fake ones or like, you know, weird spin-offs or whatever. I didn't actually believe it was an official Cartoon Network special, but looking back, it was such a weird piece of Scooby-Doo's history and one of the most creative Halloween specials I think I've ever seen. It's not worth it. So the short begins with a text just like the Blair Witch Project, where it talks about how the crew gotten lost in the woods. Velma introduces the camera to the gang, and the animation style already is great with the blend of real footage and animated characters. It kind of reminds me of like Octopath Travelers, how that's like been a popular like kind of art for a game with pixelated graphics, but like the background is super polished and amazing looking. But anyways, what you'll see a lot of in this short is the characters are a lot more mean to each other, and it gives off realism and how they would speak to each other. Like here with Velma and Fred and the rest of the gang making fun of Shaggy's real name.
And that's Norville Rogers.
It's Shaggy! Like nobody calls me normal.
What's the matter, Norville?
That's not on tape, is it?
Something wrong, Norville.
Norville.
A Shaggy snack!
They then go around and interview the locals who are real people about ghosts in the area. They eventually leave the mystery van parked in the woods and go out exploring and eventually camping, following the beats of the movie. I think a funny part of this special too is how self-aware the characters are. Like there is a scene where Fred asks Scooby and Shaggy to dress up as a nurse to tie the monster down to the gurney, and the Scooby and Shaggy are just like, how are we gonna get costumes that fast? But eventually what happens is the gang wakes up in the middle of the night, and the noise outside their tent wakes them up, and they go outside of the tent to see that there's a pile of Scooby snacks outside of the tent. And I'm not sure if this was actually Scooby's doing or if the monster slash ghost did this. It's not very clear in the special. And then the most iconic scene, arguably, in like all of Scooby-Doo, out of context, where Daphne and Velma are arguing because Daphne decides to wear high heels on a camping trip, and that's when she's like, at least I try to look fashionable. Another interesting like idea, or not idea, but I guess like thing to think about is that Velma seems to be the stand-in for the main protagonist of the Blair Witch Project. She follows the same story beats as, I want to say her name is Heather from Blair Witch Project, but basically they mirror each other, which is really interesting. Like a lot of the lines Velma says is like directly from the Blair Witch Project and that main character. Like I was saying, a lot of this special takes creative liberties but follows some beats of the Blair Witch Project, where, like say in this instance, Fred is arguing with the other main gang about where the map is and who lost it, just for Shaggy and Scooby to admit that they ate the map, which in the original it's like the main character, one of the main guys, like threw the map away because he was kind of going insane. The gang then get lost and argue whether they're going the right way or not, and again, I love how self-aware they are. Like they question Velma and how she can even read the map if it's just a van with dotted lines pointing into the woods. After it gets dark and the gang is wandering around in the dark, they end up back where they were in the beginning, and they realize that they went in a big circle. And just like classic Scooby-Doo, Scooby and Shaggy seem to split off with the rest of the gang, and they run into the monster. On the second night, Velma goes to check on the noise by herself just to find Scooby eating all the food. Then on the same night, they hear Scrappy Doo and Daphne runs into the forest, and the gang all hide from Scrappy. I just really love how they constantly joke about Scrappy now, like it's an ongoing joke because of how awful he is and how much people hated him. Eventually, after running in the forest away from Scrappy, they find the house, like they do in the original Blair Witch Project. They just happen to find the witch's hut. And after exploring the house, Shaggy does the iconic standing in the corner, just like the most iconic scene in the Blair Witch Project, which is only iconic because that's the only scary thing that happens, in my opinion. But the gang does eventually catch the quote-unquote ghost. And the ghost turns out to be some guy scaring people because it's Halloween, but the gang realize he wasn't the one that scared them at the cemetery, and then it pans out to you seeing the same ghost outside the window, and then the screen cuts and we hear a news broadcast about the gang being missing, and a missing poster pops up on the screen. So yeah, that's basically the whole special. That's the story behind one of the weirdest and coolest Scooby-Doo specials ever made. Yeah, so I'm actually editing the video right now, and I got to the end and forgot I didn't do an outro. So this is the outro. If you like this video, can you like perchance and subscribe perchance? I'm gonna try and make a real good effort to post more frequently. Like, I'm trying my best. I mean, I am going to college for Photoshop and video, so this could be good for my portfolio. So like and subscribe to show them that stick it to the man. To stick it to the man. Yeah. Bye.
Ruby van was found beside a dirt road. Search parties have spent several days searching the woods and found hundreds of Scooby snacks, but no trace of the teenage sleuths have been found.